To the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, you Road to Growth listeners. Today I have Nakada Brown. He is a health and wellness coach. And something interesting, I mean, I've had a lot of coaches on here. I've had a lot of speakers, wellness coaches, a variety of different ones. And it focuses more on the women. And I kind of brought this up to Nakada before we got on there. But you have, I guess, you lean a little more of kind of focusing on the men. And I mean, at least talking to a lot of different people on here, dealing with kind of your emotions, dealing with your feelings, especially for a man, can be kind of frowned upon, I think, in most cultures. So I appreciate if you're listening right now, I feel that you're going to get a lot of good nuggets from this one. So Nakada, how would you separate yourself? And I know I kind of threw it out there a little bit. How would you separate yourself from other coaches, other wellness coaches, and things like that?
Great question. And first of all, Vinny, thanks for having me on the show today. I really appreciate that. And, I would say that everybody is unique, right? And everyone, if they're wise, they'll focus on their uniqueness, because your uniqueness will always be different than others, unless, of course, you're a carbon copy of others. And some people are. But me personally, I'd like to say that, my process, my lifestyle, just where I'm from, my parents, I'm 37 years old. My parents are in their 70s. I've just always had a different experience in life, and I just wound it up into health and wellness initially. And then what changed after that pretty much catapulted me into work that I'm doing now with men, is that I went through some real traumatic relationship experiences that really just, is in my late 20s, just really shifted everything for me, shifted the perspective for me. And I was able to put all that, my entrepreneurial, spirit that I've had since dropping out of college to be an entrepreneur. I just put it all into my work, all into my passion for helping others. And I just, I wanted to help men like myself who went through similar scenarios as I did, just move out of it and get more into, focusing on their life's purpose. So I'd say my uniqueness, who I am, where I'm from, what I've done, is definitely a big part of it. But it's really about the focus on finding one's purpose and, really not allowing all these different things that we're so consumed with to distract us from what's really, deeply inside of you that needs to come out. You want to die fulfilled, not wishing that you did something that you really should have done.
Well, you really lay it up right there. Now I got to ask you, so what happened in your late 20s in that situation that changed you?
Bro, it was, I think I was a bit naive. And I guess all men can attribute to some of this. I was, I like I said, I dropped out of college, in my third year, and I started a photography business that really did extremely well. It was one of those things that just hit real fast. And from there on, I traveled the world a little bit, had some great experiences, and I was a very disciplined individual. My father kind of raised me to be this disciplined kind of person. So I stuck to a lot of the discipline. But, as like we all can't literally follow our father's teachings or the greatest, Confucian, like the greatest advice all the time. So I slipped and I started, really spending a lot more time in this, what I call relationship seeking or women validation process, where I lost a little confidence in myself. My business wasn't doing as good. I was starting over, and I was just really confused about what direction I wanted to be in. Like, I didn't want to be a photographer anymore at that time. So I was transitioning to other things. I was starting up a new urban farming business and a nonprofit organization. And it was in the early stages. So as I did that, I got caught up, man. I really did. I got caught up with women. I got caught up with sex. I got caught up in relationships. I had some children during the time. Things got real toxic, and I really had to put my foot down and really change things. And lucky for me, a lot of men don't have this, but I had a track record of success. Even though I was young, I had a track record of success that I could go back to. I had a track record of being disciplined that I could go back to. So I knew, yo, I'm not going to be this guy. I'm not really going to continue to do, habitual things that make my life complicated, bro. I think I was just making my life complicated. And the relationship stuff is where a lot of men get caught up these days. And I already knew how to take care of myself and this, that, and that, but I just didn't understand women from the perspective of a man who is really about his life's purpose, and how do I integrate women and relationships and happiness and family. I just didn't know. My father's old. He's got these old school, ways of doing things that they don't really apply that much to people my age and younger. It's still good stuff to learn. So I had to just reset, bro. I really did. Cost me a lot of money, of course, and a lot of heartache, and seeing things happen that you don't want to happen to you. It can either make you depressed or motivate you to make the changes to make the things happen that are important. And that's where from this experience is where I wrote my book Hard on Break, and that's really about taking a break from relationships to focus on your life's purpose, which is something that I find that a lot of men just don't do. And I've had experience before that, taking breaks from relationships to focus on business and various other things, but didn't take it that seriously because it was easy. I had to work a little bit harder this time to get out of that rut that I was in, and I had more responsibilities, liabilities, and more people. And you still have to get out of it. You still have to find purpose. You still have to literally do what you're called to do, if you know what it is, of course. If not, you got to go find what that calling is.
Well, so there's a lot of things to peel back on there. I mean, talking about being your late 20s. I mean, so doing the photography, making good money, and you talked about. I mean, was it multiple women, or you just kind of dating with multiple ladies, like one night stands? I mean, what was your?
Some of that.
Okay. And then what was? I mean, then what happened there? I mean, I think there's a lot of, probably, if there's men listening. I mean, 20-sums. I mean, they're saying, "Oh man, that's a good time." I mean, that's party right there. But what was the moment where you go, dude, this is not the path for me. This is not the right way for me.
I think the moment was, I mean, there were several moments, but sometimes when stuff happens to you, you don't get the epiphany so easily or so quickly, so to speak, right? And it has to happen again for you to get it. So I think the moment was when, I had my first child, and it was just such a great and happy, time in my life, because that was something that I was looking for. But when the relationship just couldn't work out, and I had to face the facts that we were going to eventually go our separate ways, and then just literally thinking about how that's going to affect the child, and literally thinking about how that's going to affect me financially. And sometimes we have this picture in our head of how we want things to be, this fairy tale thing that they've fed to us. And when you realize that you're not going to get it, it can feel like a big blow. So for me, the separation there, and I should have known, but I didn't. Even though I was playing the field, doing all kind of different things with all kind of different women around that time, I still wanted the fairy tale, but I hadn't put in the work to get the fairy tale. Making money and being prosperous, that's just one aspect. As a man, like, knowing yourself is a prerequisite to being able to understand the type of woman you're with, or what type of woman you need. And sure, I had some understanding of myself, but not enough to, really relate that through a relationship in the way that I needed. So, I ended up in a situation that I didn't like. And, like I said, it was one big mess, because I did it again a couple of years later.
What was the fairy tale?
The fairy tale is like this, right? The fairy tale is that whole, you're making good money, you have a nice house, you have a nice car, people like you. You got, your children, you have 2.5 kids and a dog, or whatever the case is. The fairy tale is that you yourself is enough to make everybody in your life happy, which is an illusion for most men. You're never going to make everyone happy, much less your partner. But that's what life is about: learning how to deal with the fact that some people are just not going to rock with you like that. They're not going to like you. They're not going to approve of you. And there's sometimes nothing you could do. And, learning when to quit or when to move on, that's an important factor as well, too, because not everybody's here to play the martyr.
So you in a relationship or dating a couple women, have a child, and then you talk about okay, then dating some other women, then have another child.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter
And,
of fact, I was kind of dating two around the same time. So it's the same two women essentially. But, it was messy. It got messy. And, because I wasn't dealing with it correctly.
now, so you're dealing with that, and you're still working at the same time, making good
Yeah,
money.
for sure. Like it was a headache going to work every day.
Now you're. I'm guessing you start after the third child. You start working on yourself and going. I need to better myself and get my mindset right. Is that kind of what
Yeah,
happened?
it was after the second child.
Oh, second
It
child.
was, I
Okay.
only have two. And
Oh,
yeah,
second. Okay.
definitely. Like I've always been the type of guy who understand what he wants. But sometimes I think what I was trying to do, I was trying to put everyone else first and hope that they understand that, because I knew that there was more sacrifices that I had to make to go in a different direction in my life. So as I was doing that and realizing that wasn't working for me, like a lot of men, because there are a lot of men out there who literally, you're trying to do the so-called right thing, and what are you basing that off? Are you basing it off TV, or are you basing it off your own dad, or did it work for him? Did it work for them? But sometimes it just doesn't work, and you realize, oh crap, let me just really focus on what I'm good at, what I'm best at. Let me take some time away from this stuff. Let me be a little bit more, peaceful, or let me stop resisting the flow. Just let me change enough things that leads to a little clarity on what I'm supposed to be doing, why I'm here, and regardless of whether everyone else likes it or not, if this is what I need to do, this is what I need to do.
Do you think you would have been open to change if you didn't have the two kids or go to the situation that you went through?
Yeah, definitely. I'm always open to change. I'm that type of individual, but change is relative to what you're going through in many cases, because like sometimes you don't know that you need change until something goes wrong. Like sometimes, let's say a guy or even a woman, like you're sleeping around or you're dating multiple people and nobody gets pregnant and nobody gets an STI or anything like that. But when you actually do get pregnant or catch an STI or catch feelings or get caught up in somewhere, you're like, damn, I need to change. But you had been doing this for so long that it became somewhat a habit of yours that you didn't realize that it needed to change. So sometimes when things, do kind of blow up in your face, you can either continue on that pattern or reassess yourself, and that goes for everything, including business.
Okay, now so it kind of blows up. You need change. What do you do first?
First of all, for me personally, it was an internal process of just realizing what I did. Because like one of the biggest things that we all do, even in business, is that we can find a scapegoat so easily. And when it comes and in relationships, it's usually the other person. And when it comes to your health, it's the bad foods that you're eating, or it's your mother or your wife who cooks the terrible food that makes you fat. It's easy to literally blame somebody else for what you're going through. So for me personally, it started with personal accountability. It started with, my discipline and really understanding, retracing my steps. Like, what did I do wrong here? Like, okay, I know what they did. I know what she did. I know what my boss did. You know what I'm saying? I know what others are doing, but like, how am I holding myself responsible? How can I be accountable? Like, what's on me to change? What can I do differently? So that's really where it started, because I went through that process practically in silence for a year, maybe two, but the change started. And I think when I decided to start writing the book, initially I was going to make it a podcast, not a book, but I decided to make it a book. And when I started, it just all came together and made me see, okay, this is what I did. This is what I did.
When you're going through this stuff and you feel like maybe you went down the wrong path or didn't really work out the best, what what's the idea behind I'm going to write a book or tell my story?
The My father and my family are perfectionists, especially my father's family in particular, whom I grew up with. And I felt like I lost so much. My home, my house foreclosed at the time. I wasn't in the game, bro. And so I really wanted to look at myself like as like, yo, like if I didn't do this, if I was focused, I could have turned this into something. I could have rented out the duplex, instead of losing it. I could have done this. So I just retraced my steps and tried to figure out, okay, like I wasn't, like sometimes it's just one or two things. And for me personally, it was just me being a little reckless in relationships. Yeah, other things I was pretty good at, but I had to just come to my senses and realize that I can do so much more. I can do so much better, but I have to be focused on what I need to be focused on, because if whatever it is, like even at work, like if your job is important to you and a lot of people are dependent on it, you can't allow just whims to jeopardize what's really important to yourself and your family. And so I found myself realizing that that's what I did. Like I I wasn't focused, and I looked at it like, okay, well, if you can make 100,000 doing this and doing that, then you can do it for yourself. If you can make these guys millions of dollars, like you can do it for yourself. So when it gave you some sense of confidence, when you look at what you've done, your track record, and see, okay, if I turn left instead of right, the results would have been different. So just giving yourself a better chance to be successful, it's important.
Were you embarrassed at all?
Absolutely, bro. That's why I didn't make it a podcast, because I was like, yo, nobody has to read this book, and who knows who's gonna read it. But it was released. But
Mm.
talking about it like on a podcast is, it's exposing more of your vulnerability. As a matter of fact, I'm actually doing a new podcast where I'm actually doing just that, exposing more of my vulnerability from this process, and all the coaching that I do with men, because naturally when people buy my book over the years, they're like, yo, I just went through a breakup. It's an everyday thing for the most part. So it's like, breakups serve as these big epiphanies for us to learn lessons that we probably should have learned. So, it's good to go through the process, at least for me, man. Like I don't cry about it anymore. I still want it. I still would like everything to be the way I wanted it, right? But hey, man, I'm helping a lot more people, and I have helped a lot more people with this. So I guess I had to go through it for, I work with a lot of guys, especially in their 20s and early 30s. And so, just being able to share with them some of the things that I've been through, I'm hoping that it helps them avoid some of the same mistakes, because in general, we attract who we are. Like, I don't know your life story, but I'm sure there's some similarities, because I'm on your podcast.
Oh no, I mean, I went through some shit back in the day, and it allowed me to reassess and understand where you're coming through. When you're going through the good times, like you said, right? And you're probably messing up going through the good times. Yeah, you need that basically big blow up to assess and then go, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing wrong. This is what I'm
Yeah,
doing wrong. I think for most of
right.
us, I mean, um, so you have the book's released. When do you know, right, that people are reading it and I'm going to take this to the next level and help people and coach people on learning from my mistakes?
That took a while, man. Like, almost immediately the book started to sell. But, selling a book or selling 10 books or 20 books or whatever the case is, the average book sells what they say, about 250 copies, which would be the extent of your family and friends, right? So,
Hmm.
like, that could have been it. But it started, and the feedback was just, even in the days where I was selling 2 or 3 books a month, right? like the feedback was always so encouraging. It was always so
Mm.
encouraging. I started a Facebook page, and I would just talk. I would just talk about my transcendental, moments, so to speak, how I'm using this anger, this disappointment, and what I've learned from it, so to speak. And the feedback was almost immediate, even before the book would even go on to become more of a seller. You know what I'm saying? So that started away, but it did take me a couple years for me to even get into the coaching, because men would contact me early, and I'm like, yo, like I didn't really have the tools to help them, so to speak. But even at that time, I was still learning. I was still going through what I was going through, because a lot of my book was a bit predictive about what I would go through after facing these circumstances. So as I went through them and I learned from them, then I got a lot more strength. And the more people reached out to me for coaching, I tried to incorporate some really good tools that I was certain that can help them move, out of any kind of rut that they're in and into a higher position.
So the book was about basically telling your story. It wasn't about basically helping someone. I mean, a byproduct. I mean, a byproduct was helping people out, but it was more about telling your story.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, I'd say
what?
it was part story and part, like, just like motivational, so to speak.
Now, when was there a point in time when you go, you know what? I know enough about this. I can help other people out.
Yeah, I think that happened probably about 2 years after.
Okay.
I'd experiment with, so around 2018, but people would say, "Oh, I want to work with you," and this, that, and that. I would entertain it lightly, but I wasn't really that interested in that process, so to speak. Prior to the book, I'm a marketing person, I'm an advertising person, worked in advertising firms or what have you. So, I spent most of my time just really focusing on sales and marketing, so that way I can get the word out there and sell copies. But eventually, I would see that, okay, I can do some coaching here, since people value my opinion, and so many people are saying I went through a similar situation. So they would say, okay, well, he fell down and he got back up. I'm looking to do the same thing. And especially for men who were in my position, like, it's like you had children in a very, in a way that you weren't pleased with. Relationships turned to hell. And, a lot of guys, that's depressing, especially if you had better expectations of yourself, or even like me, my dad and my mom, and particularly my dad, just like, no, this is not the way. This is this is not what I did, So you had something to say, okay, I can do better. I can do better. I shouldn't. I can be better.
When you are getting their request and you finally feel comfortable to take them on and offer coaching, how did you come up with your original pricing for your coaching?
Well, actually, I didn't. I really didn't know. But what I did was, there's self help is a huge genre,
Yeah.
and you got Tony Robbins. I've always been a person who listened to during my processes. I tried to stay motivated. Les Brown, all these type of people. But then when I learned how much these people are charging to work with people, I was like, whoa! I'm not going to charge $500 an hour, but try to look at others and figure out what's where I can work my way up to, so to speak, and try to also understand my audience. I'm selling a $20 book. A $20, a person who's got $20 doesn't necessarily have 500. So it's like you gotta work in between the lines. And then if somebody's dealing, coming from a situation like me, who's got a couple kids that you got to take care of, it definitely the average person can't afford, a certain amount. But nonetheless, we learn also from that not to undervalue ourselves, because if you are worth it, you're worth it, and people will pay it. So, the confidence to know that you have to start somewhere. In my photography business, man, we took pictures of people for free initially, just to get my work out there, and then eventually I charged more than anybody else in town, and they gladly paid for it. But that went along with my skills, and of course, people would have to believe for sure that this guy has what it takes to actually help me move out of a very similar situation, or just maybe I don't have children. Maybe I'm just a single guy. Like maybe listening to this guy can help me avoid all these women that are calling on me right now, and maybe I should invest my money instead of tricking it off and going to places and doing all kind of crazy stuff that doesn't really invest in my future. Because a lot of us who a lot of men who didn't have fathers, really are looking for a way. Like, there's such thing as the internet manosphere out here right now. And, when my book came out, it was just a very small place, and it's a growing place now. But it's a place where a lot of men who didn't have, the chops to have good conversations or good relationships with women, they go and learn. But unfortunately, most of that is based around female validation, or, feeling like you're the ish because you have a woman, or working hard to prove stuff to a woman. I really wanted to take my work a little bit further into just knowing that what you're doing is, fulfilling to yourself first and foremost. Therefore, if it feels good to you and you're not looking for anyone else's approval. And if a young man in 22, 23 can avoid, falling into the traps that are set for all of us, then he could be more confident about himself. He doesn't have to deal with somebody manipulating him or attempting to manipulate him over, because you had a child with her, or something of that nature. But there's so many traps out here. We live in a very misandrous world. Whether you have the access to success or opportunities or not, like, the world seems to hate men.
When you talk about like manipulation and things like that, can you talk a little more about that? Is that something that happened, you think, with yourself in your scenario, or is it mostly with people you've
Oh,
coached?
definitely. Oh, definitely.
Okay.
The truth is, what I talk about in the book and what I coach about is that a man needs to have a certain level of value about himself that he intuitively feels. Now, if he was raised well, his parents will embed that, and if he's lucky, he may get involved in sports, and or organized sports, or go to school and education, and something reinforces his value. So once you know that there's something valuable about you other than your car, other than your looks, other than the way you dress, you get what I'm saying? You have to get deeper into who you are. Once you know that, you got to begin to carry yourself as such. You've got to be able to see yourself as an appreciating asset versus, versus something that that anybody can have. So, once you know that, and you start experiencing treatment, not just from women, but at work, in your neighborhood, wherever you are, once you realize that, listen, man, this is not for me. This doesn't align with who I am. It doesn't align with who I am becoming. Then you got to defend who you are. You got to defend your worth. You're not going to let somebody come and buy a house that's valued at 300,000 for 200. There's no talking that you're going to allow as a real estate agent that's going to bring you all the way down. Sure, 285 maybe, right? But you're not going down to 200. So a lot of times, men, women, of course, as well, need to understand their value, and you need to see where you're going, because just like in real estate, if you strategically chose to buy a house in a particular community based on data that says that this area is going to grow, you chose to buy it because you know that if you pay 100,000 today, 5 years from now, you can get 175 for it based on if everything happens. So if you make those choices with yourself, you're not going to allow yourself to be to depreciate in the eyes of somebody else when you're worth more. So it really does take a lot of understanding of self, knowing of self, and understanding your value for you not to fall for these things. Because men or women, we all fall for it when we're not in the right mindset, when we don't really have that core identity of self. So a lot of my coaching definitely revolves around men having a value for themselves, not just based on some fairy tale fantasy stuff, but real intrinsic value based on who you are, how you show up in this world, what you were prepared to do, your skills, your talents, your assets, even, these things matter in compounding who you are, and how people treat you. You got to stand up for your value once you understand what it is and where it's going.
Well, I mean, talking about who you are, when someone's talking to you, right?
Mhm.
And you've talked about the idea of knowing your value, knowing your worth. If someone asked you, what do you go into, I mean, just say a wellness coach, or you dive deeper into that, going, I help
Actually,
people. Yeah.
I go in deeper. As a matter of fact, most of the people that I work with on purpose coaching. I call it metaphysical coaching or cosmological coaching. So I use astrology and human design. So it's based on your birthday. So really and truly, I'm not just arbitrarily guessing and telling you what your value is. Neither am I extensively questioning you, which I will do, to hear you out and see what situation that you're going through. Because generally speaking, when something goes wrong, somebody tells you the backstory, which could or could not be truth or fiction, right? But nonetheless, it gives you an idea of the setting. So it's like, okay, me and her, we were having a great relationship and we were doing good. Okay, were you guys living in the lower development community, or were you living in a penthouse? Because that's going to tell me a lot about, what bracket you guys are dealing with. So yeah, I can do that, but I do a metaphysical coaching because I don't just want to guess with people. And most of the times, not most of the times, all of the times, I'm dead on because I'm a student of esoteric sciences, I must say. So, it goes way beyond um, just saying, telling the motivational Tony Robbins things, teaching you strategy, and I don't really know you. I'm getting to know people. I'm using their birth data. Some people might think it's spooky or mystical or whatever the case is. It might be all that, but for me and the work that I do, for those who are looking for answers that no one else was able to give them, my coaching sessions help, especially in how you relate to others in relationships, business, purpose, various other things. I don't find myself to be wrong. I haven't found, anybody who says the contrary. It's really revealing. So it's another level to the work that I do for sure.
Well, how quick do you dive deeper into those topics? I mean, like, let's say, I mean, is most of your business word of mouth, or is it advertising, or is it from your book? I mean, it sounds like it's mostly from your book.
Yeah, most of it has been from the book. Of course, like I said, I was a marketer, so I collected everybody's email list, and I'm a writer, so I never stopped writing. So for at least the last 5 years, I have emails going out every week. I'm talking about what I'm going through, and people are hitting me back. I'm present on social media. I don't have a huge following, clearly, because you probably would have heard of me, but I don't. But my following is literally practically most of the people who've bought my books. So
Mm.
just staying active on social media, just talking my shit and doing my thing has attracted the people who really want to work with me, whom I can help. I did some coaching just specifically like with a guy, you know, last year, and um, we had done, the self-help purpose type of stuff. And then eventually he was like, yo, bro, like my blood pressure is high. I need some help, and we're able to talk a little bit more and help. And I do herbs. So like my first thing was health coaching. I was a part of some vegan restaurant upstarts that I did in my mid 20s before I had children. So like, I'm an entrepreneur, but I've always been a wellness entrepreneur firstly. And then as I evolved and as I learned, because I used to do a brand ambassadorship for some of the big brands out here in the early days of, of plant-based movement, about 10 years ago. So, I just fuse everything together to help those who are already in my circle or in my network, so to speak. This year, I'm definitely looking to branch out more, get bigger, grow the audience more, sell more books, as I am definitely looking to to do a second edition of this book, and before I move on to other things.
Do you feel your because when you're in that moment of, I mean, uh, I guess the boom, the exchange, right, of the two kids, the relationship stuff, the manipulation, however you want to call it, right? You're in that moment and you want to find change, want to grow. And as the years have kind of slowly faded away, do you can you dive deeper back into that person or that moment, or is it, do you feel yourself kind of leaning more towards it and more as kind of like a um less on your memories and more off of like stories or education? Does that make sense? I mean, is Is that how you're leaning, or were you? Yeah.
Well, I think it's memories or the store or experiences. It's about the relatability of it, so to speak, right?
Mm,
So I may have some experiences that others never had, and it's not advantageous to use that to help others. But when I get so much interfacing from people that I'm able to go back into the past or the memories, so to speak, and connect that experience, that particular experience, that particular mistake, so to speak, to the transcended version of it now. So like, how
mm,
did I overcome that, so to speak? So I really do connect it to growth, but it's also growth within my own personal self studies. Like, in order to be of assistance to others, especially in the capacity that I do as a coach, I have to stay on top of my game. I have to be consistently improving and growing. I can't live in the past, but I've got to be able to use the past at, at the right moments, the right stories, the right experiences, relate or connect to certain people. So being that, my experiences may be unique, it doesn't mean that a few people out there haven't had a similar bout that I can, recall on that and show them, hey, this is what I did. This worked for me. It may not work for you, but let's talk and see. I've got other tools that may be more helpful than merely just my experiential wisdom.
if we were talking in 5 years from now, where do you see yourself and your business going?
Man, 5 years from now, I would definitely like to only have a computer, no smartphone. I want to be detached from society a bit more. Um, Shoot, I'm getting closer to it. As the days go by. I would say after this second edition book comes out, I'll probably do another book within the 5 year span, and I would just probably be just helping coaching men, um, on a not full time, so to speak. But my grandfather was a farmer, and I do have ambitions to just be land based, man. Simple, just raise my children, be with my family, serve in that capacity, educate them, teach them, and prepare them for what I consider to be a very changing world over the next 5 years, so to speak. Of course, long term, longer than that, but we're just talking about 5 years here. I want to be on the land, bro, growing some food, laughing every day, digging my hands in dirt, you know, not attached to my phone, wondering how many likes and followers I have. Book or business running passively without me, bro.
If I mean, if someone's in that situation you were in, right, where I mean, maybe they're on the wrong path. They're in relationships, but they found out maybe they're in the wrong situation. I mean, is there advice that you would give to that person, or maybe to your younger self that was going through that stuff?
Absolutely. Like, particularly for men, but this certainly can apply to anyone. And it's that if the situations like mine wasn't working out, if they aren't working out, stop. Just stop. You know, whether it's the Bible or any other religious text, stillness is key. Ryan Holiday's book, I think that's his book. I love his books. But stillness is the key. Like, a lot of us don't stop for self introspection long enough to figure out or to see that there's a problem. So the first thing is to stop. Now, of course, I'd say stop and go follow or find and follow your purpose, or do the work to find and follow your purpose. But sometimes just stopping on the path that you're on is enough to wake you up to see that, hey man, this is not what I'm meant to do. This is not where I want to be. So like, really real dedication to self is something that, like, we live in a high paced, fast paced society, bro. Like, for many of us, we've been prodigized, or whatever you would want to say since you were a child. So you've been chosen to go through this, to matriculate through this educational system, to have this kind of job, to have this kind of title behind your name. And sometimes, you do it only to emptiness. It's not fulfilling. So sometimes stopping is just going to make you realize that, hey man, I've literally been living a life that it's not for me, or I have been living a life that's for me, but I'm making bad decisions in relationships, or I'm eating too much foods that are causing this blood pressure issue. When you stop, it really does give you the impetus to restart or to have a rebirth. Everybody deserves that, and so that would definitely be what I would say to guys. You're in a situation like I was in, you're playing the field, you're having all these women in your life, everything is going great, you're blessed, nothing can go wrong until it does. And then when it does, you just try to hold it down and do what you got to do and take people's advice. Nah, bro, sometimes you just got to stop, reassess yourself. Like, is this what I want to do? Is this who I want to be? Like, does this trajectory fit? Like, it's kind of like with a company, right? I've been in these companies before. First quarter bad, second quarter bad, projections are not good. Fire the CEO. This is not, it's not going in the direction that we want it to go into. You get what I'm saying? So it's like sometimes you got to fire that CEO that's running your life into the ground. But you're not going to know if you don't stop and take a proper assessment.
Well, thank you, Nakanda, for being here on the podcast. If someone's listening and I mean they feel like they can relate to you, I mean they've been going through that situation, they know someone that's going through that situation. I mean, what's the best way of them reaching out to you, joining your bubble, finding your book, whatever it might be?
Well, I'm definitely on social media, mostly Instagram and Facebook. I'm not a Twitter dude. So on Instagram, it's I am Nakada, IMNAKADA. On Instagram, I post there practically daily. And Facebook, it's Hard on Break, or facebook.com/Hard on Break. So I'm pretty regular on those spaces. My website, of course, you can get more information about coaching and working with me one-on-one on my website, which would be heartonbreak.com. And for future references, guys who probably listening to this on a podcast or what have you, look out for the I Am Nakada podcast. As of today, the 19th of January, it's not out yet, but probably in the next few days, you'll be able to listen to some of those episodes. But if you can't wait, on my website, I have podcasts there already.
Again, I appreciate you being here. I think it's something that probably not most people think about unless they're in that situation
Right.
where it happened to them. But it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And yeah, I mean, if you're listening right now and you're going through that situation, I mean, know that you're loved. Figure out yourself. Stop, like Nakada talks about, and figure out who you want to be, where you want to be, and why you want to be there. And
Facts.
you'll be there.
That's it. I mean, it always leads to somewhere, Vinny.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe. Please share. Nakada's information is in the show notes. Thank you guys. Have a great one. On to the next one.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Nice talking with you, Vinny.